Major Cadet class, I'm Cadet Bridgham.
Cadet Flewellen.
And this is our presentation on our app we created given the cyber dataset.
So the dataset you see is from the Data Center of Excellence. They're experiencing some strange traffic and want to know what they should be concerned about. The request is, as you see right here, is what the user is trying to grab. This is shown by the get verb, or the verb, which is like, it's like get. Let's say I want to grab a picture, you'd say, get that picture. Another example with this, other examples of, let's say, trace, where they're not trying to get something, they're just trying to, they have other objectives. We are focusing on get, since get is a sign of a bad user. There's client IP, which shows us the user ID, basically. As you can see, there's multiple for each one. This suggests that these users were, one, they connect to their geographic region / name. This one goes District Columbia, he's from New York. It just basically shows us where they're coming from and basically attaches what they're trying to do and where they're coming from. And this is the response that the computer gave back to what they tried to do. So a 200 is a sign of success, that means they were able to accomplish their goals. The 300 means redirection, that the server redirected them from doing what they were trying to do. 400s is client error, suggesting that on their side there was a problem, that they could not grab the information. And then 500s is a server error, which means the server did not allow them to do what they want. Another thing, focusing on region, obviously you see District Columbia, New York. Those are pretty, let's say, safer areas where the information, like, you can trust probably users from these areas. But as you can see, it starts becoming like Rio de Janeiro, Budapest. You see Bangladesh and Beijing. These probably suggest that users are coming from outside of certain areas, like kind of just outlying areas, which could be a sign of a bad user. Lastly, operating system. Typically, most people are Windows, Mac, iOS, but you might see some Linux, which is problematic and could be a sign of very bad traffic.
Okay, so going into our app, the first thing we analyzed was the percent of responses that people received, aka a 100, 200, 300, 400, or 500 response with the operating system that they used. So as shown right now, that's the Windows operating system, and this is a pie chart basically delineating which percentage of responses there were. So the majority of responses that came through were 302, which is a redirection. You have in orange right here 200, which means that they were able to get in, and then you have, obviously you can see a series of other errors that can be investigated further. But the main takeaway from this plot is that the majority of people are not getting in, which is a good thing, but due to the high volume of traffic, it's still could be a problem and still might raise concern, just because while the percentage of people who got in may be small, the high volume means that it's more of a threat. So you can scroll down to one of the more dangerous operating systems that people use, like Linux. You see most people use Linux or Ubuntu or Red Hat for negative reasons, for hacking and stuff like that, trying to steal data. So this kind of shows exactly where they lie as far as the percentages of people get in. I think it stopped. So for our second graph, we looked at the action, the top locations by action. So essentially you have an action that a user is trying to do, whether or not they're trying to get information. They might be trying to trace information from somewhere, or they might be trying to put information. So what we did was created a bar chart top locations for action. So what happens is you use this drop down, select get, and then it brings up the top 10 locations based on the number of responses for that action. So for get, you see Beijing has almost 3,000 responses. So sort of looks like they're trying to get information from us. You have this particular set NA means that the operator hid their location or used some sort of program to push it somewhere else, maybe something like that. So they have the most number of responses for get, which is definitely a sign of dangerous activity because no one is sort of going out there and hiding their location for no reason. So if you go up, you can choose a different action, maybe put where someone's trying to put information in. And there were only 2 regions that had responses for put, Liaoning, and then of course the hidden one, and they only had 3 apiece. The third graph that we used was not a graph, but sort of data analysis tool, was the locations of requests by date. So up here you have sort of a double-sided slider where you can look at the date specifically and see where in the world people were trying to access this specific site. So you can scroll up, maybe change it to April 15th to March 12th, or March 12th to April 15th, and you see a huge amount of people trying to access this site. And you can even scroll in. So maybe scroll into Asia. It's going to take a second to load. You can see some in South Korea, some in Japan, and a decent amount of them in China. And so we can use this tool essentially to monitor traffic in the region or in different regions. Some things to look at in the future if we had more time. You could set up the operating system versus the action and then reference it with this pie chart to see which operating system chooses the action more, and then see sort of exactly the percentage of responses. You could go in more into location. You could set up the operating system by location and see if different locations are using more dangerous operating systems and such.
Overall, the data science of excellence is keeping out majority of bad users and bad requests, but there is a percentage of bad users getting through who are getting and putting information, so they should be concerned about this. And they should probably take some security action, making their server stronger and their website better protected.
So class, this concludes our presentation.